What if I told you there was an actual cure for a public health crisis? And what if I told you that it would fix our addiction problem, our poverty crisis, our bullying crisis, reduce heart attacks, cancer, pulmonary disease, and immune illnesses? So I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychologist, I'm a filmmaker. I recently made a film called Cracked Up. It's about the long-term effects of childhood trauma. It's told through the story of Darrell Hammond, who is a legendary cast member on Saturday Night Live for 14 seasons. You probably remember some of his characters, like Bill Clinton and Sean Connery from Jeopardy! But what you might not know is that Darrell was cutting himself in his dressing room behind the scenes. He was cutting himself to stop the flashbacks that were terrorizing him. He suffered from addiction, from alcoholism, and 40 doctors who misdiagnosed him with every mental illness under the sun. I met Darrell on a path of recovery over 20 years ago. I probably don't look like the girl who overdosed 5 times, or the girl who lived with a guy named Snake. One afternoon, Darrell and I were hanging out, and he said, I gotta finish this scene for my play. I got a deadline, and I hate typing. I can't get to my computer. He was writing a play, a one-man show based on his book called God, If You're Not Up There, I'm Effed. I said, how about if I do the typing and you just tell me the stories? So he liked this process a lot, and he asked me to come back the next day, and the next day, and the next day. One day, as I was typing, he said something to me that not only blew my mind, it changed the way I saw everything and everyone. He said, my doctor told me not to call what I have a mental illness. He said, I want you to call it a mental injury. That was Dr. Nabil Khatbi, the doctor who, after 40 years of Darrell being misdiagnosed, finally gave him the correct diagnosis he had been longing for. And here's a clip to show what happened after that.
A psychiatrist, I think it was number 11, said that I was a manic depressive.
You are schizophrenic.
I might be a multiple personality.
9 psychiatric facilities, including lockdown.
Well, I'll just give him these pills.
He goes, well, let's face it, you are a nut. He made me laugh. He's like, I'm joking with you because you're not any of these things. You are this way because of something that happened to you.
So the reason we get easily triggered, depressed, anxious, the reason we couldn't focus in school or remember what we read, struggled in relationships, medicated our feelings with drugs, alcohol, sex, acted out in crazy ways all the time, was because something that happened? Whoa, big, giant aha moment for me. I felt like I was getting a proper diagnosis for the first time in my life. I felt the shame lifting from me, and I felt this deep compassion for myself, for Darrell. And I saw it surge out to the rest of the world. And then I got that feeling. It's a particular chill I get. It goes up my spine, goes out through the top of my head, and it lets me know that this is about something way bigger than me. I decided I wanted to make a film about it, because that's what I do. But I just needed to talk to Darrell about it. We met at one of our favorite restaurants, and I told him I want to make a documentary about your life with trauma. I really believe this is going to help a lot of people. Without hesitation, he said yes. I began filming Darrell writing and developing his one-man show at SNL, doing his stand-up, and then somebody emailed me a TED Talk by pediatrician Nadine Burke-Harris. This changed the course of the film. She shared her discovery of the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study, ACEs, revealing that when a child is exposed to repeated doses of toxic stress, it will rewire their developing brain and create ill health across a lifetime. The Adverse Childhood Experiences Study created a test of 10 questions so we can tally our ACE score. The higher your ACE score, the higher your risk for later health problems. Soon after, I filmed with Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, world-renowned trauma expert. My very first question to him was, what is the definition of trauma? He said, when your reality is not seen or known, that is the trauma. Wow. When your reality is not seen or known, that is the trauma? I thought he was going to say when a child is repeatedly abused physically, sexually, over and over every day. But no. When your reality is not seen or known, that is the trauma. Something happened to me when I was a young teenager. After the incident, I went to the adults in my life who were supposed to protect me. They looked shocked after I told them what happened, and it was understandable because I was talking about a family friend. They looked at me and they said, that did not happen. My reality was not seen. It was not known. That really was the trauma. I started to realize that this film was as much about me and my trauma as it was about Darrell's. Darrell Hammond put it so brilliantly. He said, the worst crime is not what happened. The worst crime is being expected not to tell. Darrell's courage to crack himself open for all the world to see is astounding. For men to be vulnerable, to expose themselves is so radical and challenging to the cultural powers that be. I interviewed Dr. Vincent Folletti, founder of the ACE study. He said, we are treating the smoke and not the fire. And I just pictured these fire trucks aiming their hoses at the smoke while people burned in the buildings. The substance, the food, or the cutting, it's not the problem. For the people doing it, it's the solution. We have to stop shaming our addicts. We have to help them get to the root cause. I realized that to vilify the perpetrator, this will never break the cycle of trauma. And isn't that what we really want? When I was able to create just a tiny space of compassion and realize that something happened to them, that was the moment I stopped blaming myself. And it was also the moment that I started forgiving myself for all the ways I tried to survive. When I hear about a school shooting, I feel sick to my stomach. I think, I wonder what happened to them. I wonder what happened to that kid. Darrell says monsters don't make themselves, and here's a clip.
So you want to see where your parents are
Yeah,
positioned?
if possible.
I have their ashes deposited here.
It's funny, I was drawn to this area.
I woke up at 3:30 a.m. and I'd been having this dream. And then in the dream, there was a little girl standing outside my window in the snow. And she was helpless and she was shivering and crying and afraid. And there was something very peculiar about her and about her eyes. They belonged to my mother. She was that little girl outside the window, helpless, being tortured and beaten. and turned into an animal. A pure human being before someone ever did to her what she did to me. The difference between my mother and I was that I had this maid, Myrtis, who would love me between bouts with my mother.
So my dream is that doctors become trauma-informed in medical school, and adverse childhood experiences become part of patient history when we go to the doctor's office and we fill out those forms. That prenatal moms and dads take the ACE test before they have their babies. Can you imagine everyone who is about to become a parent having the resources to address and heal their own trauma so they don't pass it on to their children? Talk about breaking the cycle. Darrell and I were interviewed on a radio show called All of It. When I got home, our cracked up inbox was inundated with emails. Thank you emails, thanking us for sharing our stories. They were all very moving and very validating. And then I read this one. I heard you and Darrell on the radio today. Thank you for sharing your stories. I was about to kill myself. And then I heard you telling your story, my story, and I decided not to. I know now what I have always been struggling with is trauma. Thank you so much. You have given me hope. As soon as I read it, my whole body started crying. I could feel how close this person was to ending it all. I felt so grateful that she was still here and writing to me. I felt angry. Is this all it takes to stop someone from killing themselves? Which now happens every 11 minutes. Why aren't the experts telling people that an ACE score of 4 or more increases your risk of suicide by 1,200%? This woman's trauma was finally seen and known and validated as real. And that was all it took to make her want to live. That is the power of telling your story. Not only can it change a life, it will save a life. Resilience builds throughout your life, and close relationships are the key. We are not meant to do this alone. Our brains are wired to be in sync. I have trauma, but I am not my trauma. I think we are like the lotus flower who blooms in the mud and rises from the warmth of the sun, luminous, untarnished by the dirt it came from. Over the course of making this film, much has been unearthed in me. Recently, a new memory of trauma surfaced, and I was shocked because after 34 years in recovery, I thought I had remembered everything. But I learned that our bodies will hold on to our trauma. It will lock it away. It can torment us with illness, patiently waiting for that moment when we are strong enough to deal with it. And then the truth will rise. Reclaiming our reality, to know what we know, that takes a lot of courage. I'm in awe of how fiercely resilient we are. My resilience comes from every person who ever believed in me. My community holds everything in love. The good, bad, and the ugly. We keep moving. We keep blooming. We keep going one step at a time, one breath at a time, one petal at a time. And through the mud, we rise. Together, we rise. And here's one last clip from Darrell.
Namaste.
What does that mean? The divine in me salutes the divine in you. Do you think there is such a place?
But I want to ask you this. Who believed in you? Who in your life truly sees you and loves you all the way? Now that you know what the cure is, who will you believe in? Thank you. Thank you.